The interim president of Mali, Jonkunda Traoré, has commended the 3,300 West African troops who joined the 1,400 French soldiers in Mali to flush out the Ansarudin rebellion. As we hear in the CFI report, the Islamists appear to be more resilient and better armed than previously thought. Meanwhile, ECOWAS chairman Alassane Ouattara has traveled to Germany to drum up more support from other European countries.
Bamako. They are to join the 1,400 French troops already deployed against the Islamist insurgents. President Traoré expressed his gratitude to the troops and said that their contribution was crucial in the campaign to win back the north.
The combat which we are carrying out together, we shall win, because it is a just combat, and because we cannot lose.
The reinforcements have reassured Malian authorities. The Islamist rebels have proved to be more resilient and better armed than previously thought.
All units are present and being reinforced every day. I believe we have reason to be hopeful.
The President also welcomed the Regional Forces Chief of Staff, General Bakayoko, who will coordinate the deployment of 3,300 soldiers sent by West African countries.
We're used to this. We're ready for them. We know what to do. Nigeria, Niger, Chad, even Côte d'Ivoire are used to it. It's a question of training and of carrying out the operation. That's all.
While France sends further reinforcements, Alassane Ouattara, the Ivorian president and chairman of ECOWAS, is in Germany in an effort to drum up support from other European countries.
I hope that all Europeans support this mission, for we Africans support it, inasmuch as it aims to stop the terrorists from advancing towards southern Mali.
EU ministers called an extraordinary meeting on Thursday. Brussels has approved a move to provide training to the Malian army. Military advisors are expected to arrive in Bamako as of mid-February.
Well, Senegalese President Macky Sall has warned against the infiltration of Islamists who masquerade behind the Islamic faith, saying a handful of extremists should not hold a vast majority to ransom. The Senegalese leader's address points to the spillover effect of the scenario in Mali after Senegal contributed to a battalion of 500 soldiers to the troops in Mali.
At a ceremony in a theatre in Dakar, the President of Senegal, Macky Sall, made an address to the nation. Senegal is contributing a battalion of 500 soldiers to the conflict in Mali, and the President warned of the threat of Islamists.
We must remain vigilant in our towns and villages, because there are infiltrations in the name of Islam. We are seeing the arrival of foreign preachers. They must be denounced. The authorities must be informed so that coercive measures can be taken immediately.
The President of Senegal insisted that the Muslim religion should not be confiscated by a small number of extremists. Senegalese imams also oppose Islamist actions in Mali.
We really regret what is going on in Mali, and we don't want this for Malians. We also fear that it will spread to Senegal. We regret this situation.
The crisis in Mali is a key topic in Senegal. The Senegalese, just like Mali's other neighbors, are all too aware that they will be directly affected by events in Mali. The Senegalese realize that they run a risk of the kind of attack that took place in Algeria.
All the news services within ECOWAS must share news and information. We must also share a global strategy for the safeguard of our states and security of our borders. And from this viewpoint, we also need support from the international community.
Little by little, the Islamists are bringing West African countries into a conflict that they try to avoid. But if West African countries are to stop Islamist attacks, they have to take action.
U.S. President Barack Obama faces a push back on his plan to reduce gun violence. Barack Obama laid out his proposals on Wednesday, which came in the aftermath of last month's mass shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. Obama signed 23 executive actions, which among others stiffen existing background checks on gun buyers and support school safety. He also called on Congress to pass a new law banning assault weapons and restrict high-capacity magazine rounds. But getting Congress to do more will be difficult. CNN's Dana examines the battle ahead.
President Obama knows the fate of his new gun control agenda depends on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue.
To make a real and lasting difference, Congress too must act. And Congress must act soon.
The president also knows his first hurdle is his own party, persuading many fellow Democrats from conservative pro-gun states to take a big political risk. One of those historically skeptical gun-owning Democrats is Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, but he released a carefully worded statement signaling an open mind. I am committed to ensuring that the Senate will consider legislation that addresses gun violence and other aspects of violence in our society early this year. Another gun-owning Democrat is the Senate Judiciary Chairman, who announced he will hold this year's first congressional hearing on guns.
Spare me symbolic arguments. Let's have a constructive discussion about how better to protect our communities from mass shootings or respecting the fundamental rights guaranteed by our Supreme Court.
Democratic leadership sources tell CNN the president's proposals to renew the assault weapons ban and magazines with more than 10 rounds are unlikely to go anywhere. Sources say the only measure with much of a chance is universal background checks. It was no accident the president mentioned it first.
As many as 40% of all gun purchases are conducted without a background check. That's not safe. That's not smart.
Although Democratic aides caution discussions are just beginning, background check legislation would likely give states financial incentives to report mental health records to a federal database. Currently, only 19 states comply. And make it a prosecutable crime to sell a gun privately without a background check. The president is galvanizing Americans to pressure lawmakers.
Ask your member of Congress if they support universal background checks to keep guns out of the wrong hands. And if they say no, ask them why not.
That question is already going to reluctant Democrats, like North Dakota freshman Senator Heidi Heitkamp. When CNN's Candy Crowley described the president's plans earlier this month, she said this.
I don't think that proposal necessarily, as you've described it to me, fits the bill for me.
A gun control advocacy group took out this tough ad against Heitkamp, saying, quote, "Shame on you." Democratic leadership sources tell me in order to pass anything, those gun control groups, who are traditionally Democratic allies, are going to have to engage in more of that kind of friendly fire in order to compete with the influence of the NRA and to beat back genuine concerns among many lawmakers about curbing Second Amendment rights. Dana Bash, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Well, from that, we'll take our second break. We'll be right back. Well, before we end the news, a reminder of our top stories. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, has donated a consignment of essential medicaments and supplies to Benson Hospital. The SOS Children's Village in Bakote has inaugurated a new multi-purpose center valued at $1.7 million. Freeing Mali from the clutches of Islamist rebels, over 3,000 West African troops have jetted into northern Mali days after Paris deployed 1,400 soldiers to the country's north. And U.S. President Barack Obama has called on Congress to pass a new law banning assault weapons. This as the fallout from the Newtown, Connecticut massacre still rumbles in Washington. Well, that seems to be all in this edition